Okay then, panettone, and what could be simpler? Just build your pasta madra. Then on day 1 we're going to make dough 1. So you want to mix that for about 4 minutes, then let that ferment for about 12 hours. Day 2 we're going to mix dough 2. Mix that for about 3 minutes but with only half the water. Then we're going to add the second half of the water plus the first half of the sugar. Mix that for 4 minutes, then add the second half of the sugar. Mix that for a further 4 minutes. Then you want to incorporate that dough with the dough from dough 1. Mix it for about 12 to 30 minutes because you want that perfect gluten development. Then it's just a simple case of shaping it, letting it cook for about 6 hours, baking it, and then cooling it upside down, of course, and you will have an absolutely perfect panettone. Or you could try this. So yes, panettone, absolutely delicious, but a total faff to make. If you want to give the real thing a go, absolutely go for it. But what I want to give you today is my kind of cheats version, which gets you pretty close to the real thing. It looks like a panettone, it tastes like a panettone, but it may just not quite have that kind of terrible airy structure that a true panettone has. But still, it's a compromise I'm willing to take. So for this recipe, there's a lot of ingredients, but don't let that put you off because it really is a case of getting it all in the mixer and mixing it. Very simple. So you're going to need 500 grams of strong white bread flour, 100 grams of caster sugar, 100 grams of soft unsalted butter. Then in here I've got 150 grams of whole milk plus 50 grams of water, so that's 200 grams of liquid in total. 10 grams of fine sea salt, 7 grams of instant yeast or a sachet if you're using them, 3 medium eggs, then 1 teaspoon of vanilla bean paste or the seeds from a vanilla pod, and the zest of an orange or a lemon or a clementine. But the zest of something I think is really important as it adds fragrance to the whole loaf. So that is the dough ingredients. Now, if you have a sourdough starter and you want to use up a bit of your discard, hate that word, but if you do, you can add 100 grams of it to this recipe. No problem, you don't need to change anything, it won't affect the ratios much. If you want to add more than that, say 200 grams, because you really want to pack a sourdough punch in there, then I would recommend reducing the flour by 50 grams and just omit the water, just use 150 grams of milk. So that's going to make the dough. Then panettone is obviously all about the inclusions, and you can go any which way you choose. Dried fruit, candied peel, nuts, chocolate chips, is up to you. But today I'm going to do a apricot and pistachio, I was going to say panna cotta, panettone. So I'm going to use 50 grams of sultanas because I always use them as a base. Then 100 grams of dried apricots. I like to use these soft yellow ones rather than the sort of dark fudgy ones. I think the flavour's better for this and I like the look of it, prettier when you cut into it. And then 50 grams of pistachio nuts. So like I said, all really simple, into the mixer, and we're going to give it a good old mix. So, flour, sugar, butter, salt, yeast, in with the milk and water, and then crack those eggs in. 1, 2, 3 teaspoons of the vanilla paste, the zest of the orange. There we go. So all of that onto the mixer, and we're going to mix that for about 7 minutes. It does take a little more mixing because we've got the eggs and the butter in there, which will inhibit the gluten formation, but 7 minutes should do it. I forgot to add my sourdough starter because I am going to use some of that in there. So onto the scales, and like I say, 100 grams will be absolutely fine without having to adjust anything else. Beautiful. Typically that's blobbed off. Get that in. Okay. So back on, like I say, 7 minutes in total. There we go, that's come together nicely. I turn it up to a 4, that's absolutely fine. It's quite a wet dough, so it's not going to strain the KitchenAid. So now that's come together, we can add our inclusions. So let's just let's see if we can do it before that drips off. So like I said, I'm going to add 50 grams of sultanas, 50 grams of pistachio nuts, and then 100 grams of the apricots. And now you just want to mix that for about 30 seconds, not too long. The sultanas and pistachios will be fine, but those apricots might start breaking down. So just 30 seconds should get them well incorporated. Okay, there we go. Already looking and smelling fantastic. So we'll just scrape this off the dough hook like that. Move that out of the way. Scrape down the side of the bowl just to get it into kind of a neat ball. There we go. So it looks something like that. Pretty wet and sticky, but it's going to be absolutely fine. Cover it with a sheet of cling film prepared earlier. God, I'm bloody organised. And now you can leave that for an hour to 3 hours at room temperature just to proof up. If you haven't used the sourdough starter and you want to really build some fermentation flavours into there, then you could pop that in the fridge overnight or for 12 hours and that'll be absolutely fine. But if you want to get this done in a day, then like I say, 1 to 3 hours. It should have reached the top of the bowl or almost reached the top of the bowl by then. And once it's done that, I will show you what to do next. Okay then, that is proof for 3 hours. If we take a little look, we can see it's risen up nicely. Hasn't reached the top of the bowl, but to be honest, the dough has got so light and fluffy now, if I leave it any longer, it's probably just going to start collapsing in on itself. So that is as tall as it's going to get. So that is ready to shape. Now you could bake this in a loaf tin or a round cake tin lined with baking parchment, but if you can get hold of some proper Panettone cases, then all the better. Not only is it going to look more authentic, but the high sides do support the dough as it rises up during the proofing and the baking, giving you a nice, tall, proud loaf. So have a look online, you'll be able to track these down, and you can get them in all different sizes, so they make great Christmas presents, like the mini ones for teachers and stuff. It's a very nice idea. So we're going to tip this out onto a well-floured surface. Trust me, you want to be liberal with the flour because this dough is sticky. So don't be a hero and try and go with just a little sprinkling of flour. Get it on there and save yourself getting in a right old sticky mess. So that should do the job. And I want to tip it out, as always, being careful not to tear it, deflate it, all those things. There's lots of nice air in there. We want to retain that. And now, working fairly quickly so it doesn't sort of spread and start sticking to the table, you just want to keep pulling the dough from the outside into the middle, forming it into a ball. If you've got a dough scraper, that may well be helpful. So just like I say, pull the side, fold it into the middle. Pull the side, into the middle, into the middle. I'm going to go for a little extra dusting of flour. Move that over, and as you do this, you're just building up tension across the top, so when you flip it over, it should be nice and smooth, Give it a little, if you just clear now some of the flour off of the worktop, you can use that to get some traction. Just keep moving it, pulling it, and there we go. We've got a nice taut boule. So now we want to transfer that into our case. So scrape it off, drop it in, mess that up slightly, but that's absolutely fine. And now you want to cover that with a tea towel, just like that, and leave it to proof at room temperature for about 45 minutes to an hour. If you've got a paper case like this, then basically you're just looking for it to be doming just over the top. So when we reach that stage, I will show you how to bake it. Alright then, well I've let that proof for the full hour, and if we have a look, beautiful! That has risen up nicely. As we can see, we're just doming over the top, so we are ready to bake. So you need your oven preheated to 200 degrees Celsius, that's about 390 Fahrenheit. But before we put it in, we want to score the top, and I found the best way to get a nice even spring is to cut across. So just get a serrated knife, works well, just drag it along the top one way, and then 90 degrees, drag it the other way. And the other thing I've seen a lot of people do, I don't know if it's traditional or not, is to put a knob of butter in the middle of that cross. So just 15 to 20 grams. I'm always happy to add extra butter, but I think as well it keeps the top moist as it bakes, which encourages more spring. So I'm going to get that in the oven. I'll bake it at that higher temperature, the 200 degrees, for about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to turn the oven right down to 160 Celsius, even 150 Celsius, that's about 300 Fahrenheit, and then cook it like that for an extra 30 minutes. So that'll be 40 minutes in total, but you want that lower temperature for the main part of the cooking to ensure the top doesn't get too dark. If you notice it is getting a bit dark or almost blackening during that time, you could make a little foil hat to pop on there, and that will just stop it getting too dark. But you should be alright, but do keep an eye on it. So I will get that baked, get it out and cooled, and then we will have a little look inside. Alright then, out the oven and cooled. I stuck it in the garden to get it to cool down a little bit quicker, but looking good. The scoring on top's made it spring nice and even in the oven. Looks a bit like a giant muffin. Smells absolutely delicious. Now normally I would just cut this into triangles to serve it up, but for the sake of the video we'll go right through the middle so we can have a little look inside. So let's cut all the way down. And let's have a look inside. Come on. Oh yes, look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. Cooked all the way through. Nice and light and fluffy. Yes, it's not quite as light and airy as you'd get with a proper panettone, but that's the trade-off between doing a 2 or 3 day process to a 3 or 4 hour process, and that is a trade-off I am happy to make. Oh, that smells so good. Let's just see if we can get right through there. There we go. And now I'll cut a bit off so I can taste it. There we go. Peel that paper off. Look at that. I mean, it is really light. I am actually super pleased with that. So let's just tear some out. That is so light and fluffy. I mean, I know I'm saying it might not compare to a proper panettone, but god damn, that is not far off. And we have knocked that out in about 4 hours. I mean, look at that. That's amazing. I've amazed myself. I mean, seriously, I wasn't expecting it to be quite that good, but That is the sort of surprise you want at the end of baking. Not disappointment, you want happiness. And that gives it to you. That, bam, dipped in some hot chocolate would be absolutely perfect. It's going to keep really well 2 or 3 days in a bread bin or wrapped in a plastic bag. That'll be absolutely fine. After that, you might want to switch it over to breakfast and toast it, add some butter. That'll just freshen it up a bit. And beyond that, if you've still got enough left, which I doubt you're going to have because you're going to eat this pretty quickly, but if you do have a lot left over, it makes an absolutely fantastic bread and butter pudding, so there's no way that is going to waste. So seriously, give this one a go. I mean, you can see how happy I am with it, and with the festive season just around the corner, that is going to be absolutely perfect. So I'm going to go and make myself a hot chocolate, dig into that. In the meantime, like and subscribe, leave your comments below, and until next time, happy baking.